us about the environment. You are kind of consistently optimistic and have been a lot over the past year. Is that still the case?
I'm very, very optimistic about where we are.
Yeah.
And especially the journey we've taken this year to get here. It's been it's quite the roller coaster, up and down. And we certainly didn't start the year in the same place, but I really felt the foundation was there for a very solid end to 2025. But that foundation now has really created, I believe, an unbelievable ramp into 26. And I think we're going to have a lot less of the noise that we heard during 25 and more focus on how this economy is building strength as we move through 26.
I want to go to what Kathy Wild was saying about concern over New York City. She has a close relationship with many business leaders. She's also part of the mayor's transition team. Last time you were on with us, it was just after the election. We spent a lot of time talking about politics, specifically housing because of your construction background.
It was a great conversation.
But the New York City side of things, I mean, you've got locations in New Jersey and New York and Florida as well, but you've got locations here in New York City, so you understand the economy. What are you hearing from your New York City-based clients?
Look, I think the economy in general is very strong, but we are, as you just heard, we are on the precipice of, if there are changes that drive the sentiment to think that New York is not a friendly place to do business, we could see change. And so certainly that's a concern. We certainly know there's a concern about affordability in New York City. But overall, I think it's all going to work out. It always has before.
Does it make you optimistic that somebody like Kathy Wild, who has the ear of so many in the business community, is involved with the incoming mayor?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's others who are joining the team who I think we would all say we're happy they're there. Look, at the end of the day, I don't think anybody can argue with some of why this mayor was elected, right? The issue of affordability, trying to make a fairer system for everyone. I think we could all get around that. How we go about doing that is a different story.
How do we? I know we talked about this with you.
But you're a builder, so that's why we talk about it with you, because you understand these things.
I'm trying to unpack this. I mean, a builder's not going to build a building if it's not going to be profitable, right?
Look, there's been numerous studies across this country and across various time periods. It doesn't matter when, how, or where you look at it. There's a really interesting story right now in the Twin Cities, where one city is trying to maintain affordability by government control, and then the other city is doing it by free market. Let's let the builders build. Yeah. Because to me, some of the laws of economics, they're like the laws of physics. You may like to agree or disagree, but they are what they are. And if we increase supply, we're going to have lower prices, and that's something I think politicians don't typically understand. I mean, if you look right now, even in like the rent regulated portfolio, rent stabilized portfolio in New York City, there's 50,000 units that are unoccupied because they're uneconomical to put back on the market based on what they're rent stabilized at and the investment needed to get them back in order. You would think that would be a priority. We want to get those units back into the marketplace because that would help those who need the help the most.
So if you were advising a politician, the incoming mayor perhaps, or
I'd love
city
the opportunity
council,
to do that.
What would you be?
You haven't talked with him?
Not yet.
Okay.
We'll have our opportunity.
So what would be the suggestion to actually fill those vacant apartments?
Oh, there's a number of things we could do, right? We could mean test for the people that live in rent stabilized apartments. There are incentives the city could provide to entice the builders to be able to invest make the investments they need in each one of those apartments to make them viable. Since they're vacant, allow for vacancy decontrol up to some level. I mean, there's so many common sense things that we could do, probably over a dinner napkin, that would get those apartments back online in 90 to 120 days.
So why is this so hard?
Is
it politics?
It's how politics works. I don't know. And it's a mindset, right? There's a mindset that government can do a better job than the market can do, when in fact, we've learned over and over and over again here in the United States, the market generally is able to solve these problems and in a very efficient way, mind you.
All right, I want to broaden out. We always do like to talk to you because you have such great exposure to small business and construction generally. How are both of those areas doing? And I'm also curious about small business, as we had a story this week about PayPal looking to apply to become a bank and really tap into the small business area. It doesn't happen overnight, so I'm just curious. You laugh. Do you think that's
I think it's fine. You know, what I find fascinating is all these companies that want to be banks, because in the current regulatory environment, it's fashionable, profitable, and whatever to be a bank.
Banks have done really well this year.
There are other times in history when being a bank is a little bit more difficult than that. And the banking industry is not just one particular point in time. It's built to last for very, very long periods of time. And so we'll see how they like the regulatory environment at other points.
So small business.
Small business, I think, is doing very, very well today. Again, the noise is out of the marketplace. People are feeling good. I think one of the biggest things we're hearing, notwithstanding some of the employment or unemployment information, is that small business is having a hard time hiring qualified people to fill positions. I think they're getting their arms around what's happening with tariffs. I think they're getting their arms around whether or not there's real structural inflation in the economy, and it appears there really isn't. There's been some price setting that's been going on, but overall, the vast majority of the small to medium-sized businesses that we represent at ConnectOne are doing quite well, and they're seeing. What's more important, they're seeing pipelines and backlogs that are taking them into 26, which is one of the reasons I feel so optimistic about where we're headed in 26.